Once again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I am Niveta from Relativity Management Solutions India Private Limited. I like to give a quick introduction about Relativity Management Solution. Our mission is to be a world-class payroll and compliance service provider for companies to achieve a competitive edge at affordable cost. Our vision is to be most respectable and renowned firm in HR and finance domain. Our vertical are payroll service, statutory compliance, tax compliance, or accounting and digital form 16. We have functional experts like HR consultant, payroll experts, compliance specialist, taxation expert, labor law advocates, and audit practitioners. The, these are These are interesting fact about relativity. We are 14 years in the industry. We crossed 185 clients. We do 12 lakh transactions per quarter. We maintain 99.49% of accuracy. We are present in 16 cities. We issued nearly 5 lakh Form 16 yearly. And we are proud to say 99.98% client retention. And I like to introduce today's presenter. Ms. Vanishri Gopalakrishnan is the founder and CEO of Volga Learning Solution, and she has 21 years of experience of an HR professional. She helps organizations to achieve their personal and professional goals. She has rich experience as an HR business partner and learning and development facilitator with a global workforce. She has trained over 6,000 employees and designed and developed more than 40 courses. She is also an internationally certified master facilitator from the Berlier Singer Academy. It's time to start our webinar. Let's start and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Niveda. Good morning, everyone. Happy to meet you here through this webinar on key insights into making your performance management system effective. Yeah, so before we really get into the webinar, I would like to understand, the participants. May I know how many of you are from the HR fraternity? If you are a HR manager or a HR executive or a HR leader, please type into the chat box as HR. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. So I do see most of you are HR. Anybody other than HR? Thank you for that response. And the next, I do see people from finance, HR, and marketing. That's wonderful. Yeah, may I also understand the industry that you come from? Please do type in your industry. Are you from IT, ITES? Okay, I do see people from manufacturing, IT, manufacturing again. Okay, energy, freight forwarding and warehousing. That's wonderful. So we do have a mixed audience across sectors. Thank you. So before we really get into the webinar, let me introduce, Niveda has given the introduction about myself. I head Volga Learning Solutions, and Volga Learning Solutions is just a startup. And I have founded Volga in 2021 with a mission of building winning organizations through unleashing people power. So with the expertise I carry over 2 decades, it's now time to reach out to SMEs and corporates and help people unleash the potential in their employees, therefore helping the organization to win. That's about Volga. And let me share my screen quickly. Are you able to see my screen? Please do type in the chat box. Yeah, thank you. Okay, now let's understand what is your perception of performance. What is your perception of performance, and what do you understand by the word performance? When we say performance, what do you understand by the word performance? Please keep your answers rolling in the chat. What is your understanding of performance? Here we would be discussing it largely from the context of an organizational performance or employee performance. So employee contribution to their role, that's wonderful. Thank you, Shruti. Somebody DMN, quality of work, yeah, meeting expectations, the way we are exhibiting our talent. Yeah, we do have parts of performance here. Okay, Gayatri says the capability of attaining our goals in R&R. Okay, is it capability? Wonderful. To do the work with standard bars. Piyusha, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So when we say performance, yes, absolutely, it is about contributions to the organization. Okay, when we say contribution, what constitutes contribution is the effort that goes into executing your tasks, activities, responsibilities. Yeah, I mean, when we say contributions, all of these go into contributions, your effort in executing your tasks, activities, and responsibilities. And now, do we stop there? Is there something more to performance? What is that we aim at achieving when you contribute? Do outcomes matter in performance? Yeah, can I see some answers? Do outcomes matter in performance? Yes or no? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much. So when we say performance, one is the effort and the contribution, and the second part, the most significant one, is the outcome. Now, gone are those days where organizations were looking at hardworking talent who would slog 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, and 14 hours. And it was the performance were measured by the efforts. In today's world, it is not about hard work, it's not about efforts, it's more about the outcomes. Are your contributions leading to the desired results? Again, friends, let me introduce this word. It's not about outcomes, it's about desired outcomes, desired results. Yeah. Let's take a very common example, or a very simple, easy to understand example. We've just, all of us would have had a breakfast. Now you have a restaurant and you have a roti master in the restaurant. Now we say, okay, the roti master's responsibility is to roll out or make rotis. And now, how do you measure the effectiveness of the roti master? Yeah. So when you say roti, what are the factors that go into it? How many rotis, at what cost per roti, and how is the texture of the roti? Is it liked by the customers? Is it, again, as per the preferences? What is the amount of innovation that goes into the roti? What are the varieties made available to the customers? And what is the turnaround time? What is the average prep time by the time there is an order taken to the time the order is delivered on plate? One of the most simplest examples. Okay, if when we are talking about making a roti, which is in most of the households a daily routine, now let us look at organization performance. Just scale up, magnify, and look at the organizational performance, where we have various functions and every individual has a checklist of so many activities to do. Now, each of these activities, now what is the desired outcome or the desired result that is expected from each of these activities? Is it significant? Yeah, a lot of times we do see people, or rather even we as an employee, we just remove the HR hat for a moment and look at ourselves. And especially during the appraisal season, when the organization rolls out the increment letters or the compensation review letters, there is a lot of talk, sentiment going around saying that, say, I've slogged for so many hours, but is my performance being really rewarded? Is my work being valued? These are some of these sentiments which we can see running across multiple organizations, multiple categories, and multiple cadres of employees. Now we again wear the HR hat and we look at it, we say, okay, you have worked, but what is the outcome? This is a huge disconnect that we see in multiple organizations. You start from a family-owned business or an SME to large corporates and MNCs. Can any one of you say that I do not have these kind of sentiments or feelings in my organization? Everybody is happy with the appraisal. Is there anybody who can say yes, 100%? If you feel all your employees are happy with the performance management system in your organization, you say 100. Nopes. Yeah. So we all understand. And one end, thank you so much. So one end we have our employees, one end we have the organization, you have management on the other end. How do we bridge these expectations? Yeah, unless you bridge these expectations, can you call that your performance management system is effective? Yeah, the first and foremost insight into making your performance management system effective is to ensure that your organization's strategic plan is aligned with the individual goals. Like, are we able to see the connect running across the organization, starting from the vision of the organization to the strategic objectives of the organization? And from the strategic objectives, you derive the annual organizational goals. Let's say there is an organization having a turnover of around 100 crore. Now, for the financial year 23-24, the organization decides that the revenue numbers are going to be there. They have an aspiration of a 20% increase in the revenue numbers. So now it would be the annual organizational goals are 120 crore. And now let's say this is a product development company and you have 4 key product areas. Now each of the functions, which are product A, product B, product C, and product D. So the total of operations, you have 4 products, then you have a finance department, you have a marketing department, you have a HR department. Now each of these functions, how are they absorbing the organizational goals, and how are they as a collective unit going to achieve? What are going to be the building blocks into achieving the organizational goals? Are we clear on this? If you're clear on this, please do type clear. Yeah, how does the strategic goals transcend into the functional goals of the organization? Clear. That's super. So now you have the functional goal set. Let's take the HR department as an example. Now to achieve this 20% increase in revenue, there is a team, the product line A comes and says, see, I need 2 more resources with this kind of a skill set. Yeah. So now what happens, the manpower planning of this organization, let's say the organization is a 200 member, the size of the organization is around 200 members. Now the HR product A says, I need 2 more resources. Team 2 says, I need 5 more resources. Team 3 says, no, I'll manage with my existing resources. And team 4 says, I need another 4 resources. So you have 10 additional resources coming in. Marketing comes and says, okay, for the social media marketing, now I cannot outsource, I need somebody in-house. So you have totally 11 resources which are required. So now HR goes back and says, okay, I need 11 more resources. So 11 more resources, now this goes as an input to the recruiting team or the recruiting manager, who would say, okay, the goal for this year is going to be 10 additional resources. Now he would say, okay, what has been the average attrition rate so far? And from there, how do I derive my numbers and what is going to be the quarterly recruitment plan? And therefore, the recruitment manager's goals setting happens. Clear? Now, are we able to see the connect between the organization strategy to the functional goals and then to the individual goals? Are we clear on this? If you're clear, please do type in clear. Wonderful. So now let's assume a scenario where you do not look at this. Each department works on their performance management goals. The goal setting happens every year, and people do say, okay, some in HR takes a number, okay, 20%, and here also 20%. So unless all of these, and so what happens, the goal setting happens at the organization level in consultation with the functional heads, and then again the functional head goes back and makes a couple of iterations consulting the individuals. Friends, what I would appeal to you here is that, see, when it is not a one-way traffic, the goal setting process cannot be a one-way traffic. And if it's going to be a one-way traffic, again, the effectiveness is going to be a question. So it's always recommended to have a dialogue in the goal setting process, wherein each of them understand what are the constraints, what are the limitations, what are the prospects, and what are the opportunities, and what is going to be the cost involved in all of these things, and what are the timelines involved. So there is a calibration and recalibration which happens across each vertical or each of these functions, and then collectively you make sure that your organizational annual goals are achieved. So then we move on to okay, we spoke about alignment. The next part of the alignment, now we have come to the individuals. Now, when you take individual, are we defining the roles very clearly in each of these organizations? Now, what happens, what I have observed over the last 20 years across organizations, be it small scale organizations, a smaller organization with a 100-member team, or with large organizations, somewhere the lines are not very clearly defined. The lines of authority, the lines of accountability, and the responsibility. There could be so many people, a team of individuals who are responsible for achieving a certain set of tasks. But then the manager who supervises this particular team is answerable for the collective performance of these team members. Now, it's very important to understand what responsibility is and what accountability is. Now, if there is an individual who doesn't understand the difference between accountability and responsibility, it is very common that individuals end up taking a lot of activities as in their to-do list. And when it comes to answerabilities, we start seeing people to complain that I do not have time, I'm overloaded, and there are no resources, my resources are not taking responsibilities. Sometimes in organization, what happens, there is under delegation or there is over delegation, and you have to carefully watch to see the subtle upward delegation happening in some of these organizations. So if you want your performance management system to be very effective, be very clear on what is the accountability of the individual and what are the responsibilities of the individual. And your job description needs to clearly define these areas. What is the purpose of the job? What is the accountability? And what are those key responsibilities and the minor responsibilities that this job holder would take up? So define the roles clearly. Now let's watch this video. Yeah, please do carefully watch. Would you like to watch it once again? Please do type into the chat. Would you like to watch it once again? Or are we clear? Clear. Wow. Okay, what did we see here? Please type in your answers. What did we see here? Okay, who does what with the sequence? Wonderful. Mr. Sanjay, clear assignment of tasks. Yeah, Navya says planned teamwork, efficient allocation. That's wonderful. Different people responsible for different jobs, Shruti. Everyone is clear with their roles. Yeah. Thank you so much. Now, just imagine a scenario where you see there are people doing different roles. There is a person in front of the car who holds a jack to hold the car to make it stop. There are two individuals at every wheel of the car. Right? There are two individuals at every wheel, and you have one person. I mean, there are again 2-3 people who are fetching the tires, and you can also see people on the sidelines as a standby to check if there is some other support which is required. Now, the total duration of this whole pit stop was a world record. And are you able to see the timing there? How many seconds? How many seconds did it take to change the 4 wheels of this car and get it rolling? Yeah, 1.82 seconds. Just imagine, by the time you just close your eyelids and open it, the cars are already out, having all the 4 tires replaced, doing a basic maintenance recheck, fueling done. All of that happens in that 1.82 seconds, and 20 people operating on that car. Imagine the amount of role clarity and standard operating procedures that have gone into it. Just imagine how much of rehearsals would have gone into it. If there is going to be a car or a racer who wins, the credit goes to the racer. Yeah, and what if something happens? Who takes all the blame? What if something goes wrong? Who takes the blame? Please type into the chat. Yeah, the entire team. The entire team at the pit stop takes the blame. Yeah, the entire team at the pit stop takes the blame. Now you look at the individual members working on each of these wheels. So they are responsible, but who is end of the day accountable for the entire pit stop? Who is accountable for the entire pit stop? Please type in. Yeah, the head, the manager, or the chief, the crew chief. Yeah, the crew chief who leads all these members is the one accountable for all of these happening at the pit stop. In organizations, in corporations and companies, in smaller organizations or family-owned businesses, we work on a very wide scale. Where in family-owned businesses, you can see it is like a spider web. You have a lot of interlacing responsibilities and interlacing accountabilities in smaller organizations because the number of members are limited. But then even when we work with organizations who have, let's say, a 50-member team, we say, please do identify and delineate what is accountability, who's accountable for. Maybe another manager who has his different accountability will be responsible for a support activity to manager A. But then there should be a clear demarcation of accountabilities and responsibilities, and very important to have this for your performance management system to be effective. Clear? The third area, first point we saw, align your organization strategic objectives to the individual members, goals of the individual members. Point number 2, we saw that have your roles clearly defined, define your accountabilities, responsibilities, what are your KRAs. Now, third area is that the performance management system in itself, how well is your performance management system defined? Is it holistic? Does it factor for the current requirements of the job? Does it clearly spell out what are the key result areas? Now, all of us, I mean, most of you are from HR, people from finance and marketing, of course, a few of you are there. All of you all must know what are the key result areas. Yeah? We understand what KRAs are? Yes? Please type in yes. We are clear on what KRAs are. Yeah, thank you, Neela. Thank you, Gayatri. Right. So we know what KRAs are. It outlines what are those 5 or 7 important areas which absolutely matter when it comes to measuring the performance of this particular individual. Yeah, it could also include your accountability. It could also include your key responsibilities. Now, we say, okay, these are very important in terms of the result areas. Now, let us say, let's take a sales example. Let's assume that you have a sales manager or a business development manager out there. And one of his key result areas is that he needs to deliver. He needs to contribute to revenue growth. Contribute to revenue growth is a key result area. Now, contribute to revenue growth is absolutely an open statement. And how would you measure if the person has achieved the desired outcome? So now making this generic statement more specific is where you move on to your measures. Now, how do you measure? So let's say contribute to revenue growth is a key result area. What could be the possible key performance indicators? Can I see some of your answers in the chat? What could be the possible key performance indicators, KPIs? Can I see some of your answers in the chat? What revenue earned per month against a defined target? Thank you very much, Binsi. Thank you. Yeah, Neela, Prashant, ownership of work, aren't we going to subjective again? Market visit number, wonderful, Sanjay. Number of customers added, that's lovely. Maha says number of customers added. Yeah, let me take these 3 statements. Now you say, what is the revenue you have achieved per month against the target? Now, are we able to see that from an open-ended generic statement of a key result area that is contribute to revenue growth? Now we are more fine-tuning it into a specific number of what is your monthly target? What has been your achievement against the monthly target? Now, this is a key performance indicator where you add measurability and you make it more specific. Now, people who are in the finance department might ask, now, how do I make it very specific? Okay, we say, okay, compliance is one of the key result areas is adhere to the statutory compliance requirements of the organization. Make sure that all the statutory compliances are taken care of is the key result area. Now, key performance indicator is file all the statutory reports on time. Yeah, and now it is yes or no. You completed 100% or there are certain reports, you give a breakup of each of these reports and say this would carry, these are the weightages. Now, how do you assign weightage to each of the performance indicator? Now, let's specifically look at the IT industry, or let's say it is a service industry where you have a delivery manager. Now, the key result area for a delivery manager could be deliver projects on time as per the customer's requirement. Now, key performance indicator would be the number of escapes or number of gaps, the number of escalations. These could be the possible. And what is the outcome? End of the day, what is the delivery percentage is the key indicator. Now, when we're talking about key performance indicator, it is also important to make sure you include lead indicators as well as lag indicators. Now, any clue on what is a lag indicator? What is a lag indicator? Friends? Yeah, lag is outcome of the target. Wonderful. Thank you, Sanjay. So we are looking at the outcomes. So it is also called as result indicators. People call it as outcome indicators, result indicators. These are lag indicators, especially going back to the same sales example. End of the day, what is the sales revenue that this particular individual has achieved is a lag indicator, because that is the ultimate outcome of various efforts. Now, what do you mean by lead indicators? We all very clearly know that lag indicators are very essential because you're talking about outcomes. Now, what is the significance of lead indicator, or what do you understand by a lead indicator? Effort taken to achieve lag. Thank you, Sanjay. Yeah, Neha says lead is action steps to achieve lag indicators. Wonderful. Thank you, Sanjay and Neha. Yeah, when you say sales, the number ultimate revenue is a lag indicator. Now, what are the steps or the efforts required to achieve the revenue targets? So, number one, you could say that the number of customers that you need to visit on a daily basis. Now it is going to, the manager would say, okay, my team has to visit so many customers on a daily basis. So what is going to be the permanent journey plan? As an FMCG sales, you call it as a permanent journey plan. And for the executive, it would be the individual PJP adherence. So if I'll have to meet 10 customers a day, and what is the average of 10 into 26 working days? Now 260 customers in a month, what is the achievement against the lead indicator? So the market work that you do, the groundwork that you do, all the efforts that go into making the outcome, the building the outcome is called as a lead indicator. As important it is to have lag indicators, it is equally important to have lead indicators into the system, because once you do not have lead indicators, or you dilute on the number of lead indicators, what happens is many times people will be in for surprises at the end of the appraisal period. Let us say people do not review it on a monthly or a quarterly basis, they just review it on an annual basis. People would be surprised to see that lag indicator has not been achieved because some of these lead indicators have not been factored in or have not been reviewed parallelly along with the lag indicator. So if any gap in the lag indicator, the prompt is to look at the lead indicators and say, have I factored for the right lead indicators? Are the lead indicators heading in the right direction, or are they giving the desired results? Now, focusing on the lead indicators is one way of achieving the lag or the end results of the organization or the individual. Clear? Are we clear on this? Can I see some answers here or any questions on this so far? Clear. Wonderful. Thank you. So now once you have all of these key performance indicators factored in with building the lag indicators and lead indicators, now you move on to look at the targets or the goals. So most of the organizations, they do not say KRAs, KPIs. When you speak to employees, they may not even know what are the KRAs and KPIs. They would just say, see, these are my goals. Now, the goals are nothing but the numbers, the dates, the timelines, or the milestones that matter. So whether a person has achieved, not achieved, or it is going to be a work in progress is what the goals, goals are actually guiding posts towards which you move. These are the compasses towards which you move and are, as the word target says. So you need to achieve these targets or you need to go walk beyond these targets. Now, again, some of the organizations, larger corporates, we have a foolproof process wherein the targets are very meticulously set and there is a systematic approach. But in smaller organizations, there is a tendency where the targets are given unilaterally by the managers. So now, friends, how would you take it when you're being instructed or when you're being told? Is telling important or is more effective or being consulted more effective? Thank you, Sanjay. Sanjay says scorecard is important for alignment of lead to lag. So what kind of an approach would you prefer in goal setting? Consulting. Manav says consulting. Thank you, Manav. Yeah, Gayatri also says it's consulting. So as HR, it is important for us to drive the importance of having a consultative process. I know in real life scenarios, we have managers are tied up for time. Time is one of the most scarce resources, and getting the functional managers or the heads or the appraisers to have a consultative process in goal setting is going to be really hard. But again, in order for your system to be effective, it is worth the effort. Are we on the same page? Are we on the same page? Yes. Please type in. Thank you, Maha. Yeah, again, that's wonderful. If it is a fresher, again, the fresher would not have any clue as to what it is. Ideally, you need to give a fresher some time for him or her to warm up in the system. And then maybe if it's going to be the first appraisal cycle, then he or she needs to be told or given the targets. But then once there is a person who's familiar with the process, the organization, then a consultative process is recommended. Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, the key success factors of having a performance management system that is effective. Make sure that you quantify most of the KPIs, and wherever it is not possible, at least let's look at dates, milestones, and be very specific in terms of the milestones. Including quantifiable elements into the performance management system is one way of making it objective. So as far as possible, I completely understand it is not possible to eliminate subjectivity, but wherever possible, let's try and make it objective. Now, look, what is the frequency? Ideally, what is the frequency of having a performance management system effective? A lot of organizations have a process and they look at it only at the end of the year, where it is relatively less organized and less systematic. Smaller organizations have the habit of looking at it only at the end of the year. There are organizations who have a half-yearly appraisal process. There are organizations who do it on a quarterly basis. There are organizations, for example, Relativity, which looks at the goals on a monthly basis, and then the appraisals happen on an annual basis. So the more frequent you look at the achievement of your goals and targets, the more effective your organization, the PMS is bound to be. because there is an opportunity for you to give an immediate feedback to the appraisee, so that there is a lot of course correction opportunities which happen. And then people do not have surprises at the end of the year. So there are organizations, for example, I was speaking to someone in an engineering industry yesterday, and they said, okay, quarterly is too frequent and half yearly is too long. So in our organization, we do it once in 4 months. So depending on the organization's requirement, depending on your business season, and depending on the availability of the functional heads to do this process with sanctity, each organization can decide on the frequency level, but the thumb line is that the more frequent it is, the more effective it happens. At least let's look at the goals and the numbers. Now, competency definition for various levels, we all know that the PMS has an element of factoring for the behavioral competencies. Now, when we say behavioral competencies, this is the most subjective of all the components into an appraisal system. Now, as an organization, if we are able to identify and define each of the behaviors that define a competency for, let's say there are executives, there you have managers, you have senior managers, and you have the leadership team, and you also have freshers, beginners. Now, what is going to be the level of competency for a fresher, for an executive, for a manager, for somebody in senior leadership and the management? Now, these behaviors need to be very clearly defined as per the levels, and again, have an open dialogue, and most importantly, training to the appraisers. So what happens, maybe at the launch of the performance management system, you would have imparted training to the appraisers. But are we doing it annually? Because once most of us go back to the behavioral competencies, or the annual appraisal system is very common in organizations. Do we have a refresher, or is there a manual which guides on appraisers where we do not end up doing performance management system or appraisals as a ritual, but associate more meaning, more purpose, and deliberately intentionality to it in terms of understanding what is the level, what is the behavior required vis-a-vis the behavior exhibited by the individual. So training to appraisers is one of the most important key success factors. And in organizations where we consult on performance management system, these are few of the elements that we really say focus on in terms of incorporating all of these into the performance management system. Now, we all know about the 9-box talent grid, or some organizations would follow a simple bell curve. 9-box talent grid comes into place not only for performance rewards, but also from a succession planning standpoint. Now, starting from somebody who's low on current performance versus future potential, to the highest, where the individual is very high on current performance as well as very high on potential. Now, again, the big question that HR managers, organizational members, we face, there are multiple schools of thought in case of force fitting the bell curve. So you say 5% of the people will have to definitely go into the risk, low potential, low performer category, and 5% go into the high potential, high performer category. Depending on the organization's maturity level, the individual HR philosophy of the organization, the vision of the leaders, each organization takes a different approach. Getting into that discussion would again require another day long of workshop on the matrix alone. Yeah, so we look at how do we spread all these employees, and what is the level of communication that happens between the managers and the employees. Now, having a very closed system and employees looking at the outcome as surprises, communication programs on the performance management system in itself is very important, where we have an ongoing communication system. So we spoke a lot about performance management system, design of the system, how it should factor for the various elements of lead and lag indicators. Now we step out and look at the organization and teams from a larger perspective, look at the purpose. Are we communicating a unified purpose and one goal to the team? Is there a culture of collaborating, flexibility, agility, transparency in decision making in the organization? As all of these do matter for an effective performance management system. What I would like to focus on, friends, is the element of trust here. If you really want an extraordinarily performing organization as a HR, if you focus on building an extraordinarily performing organization, do we have trust running across the organization? Do we have the element of trust intra-departmental and interdepartmental running across teams? Is there trust between HR and the employees? Is there trust between management and HR? And all of these do matter in defining the effectiveness of your performance management system. Understanding your people, there are various types of personality traits. Maybe some other day we would cover elaborately. The reason the slide is here is to help you understand that if you want your performance management system to be effective, it is important for the managers to understand people. Every manager in your team needs to have an understanding of what are the different types of personality. Rather than having a stereotypic expectation of the employees, what is expected of a team member, it is important for managers to understand, and it's important for HR to take these kind of trainings to the respective managers across the organization. Very, very important. If you really want your performance management system to be effective, look at the linkages between your performance and rewards. Variable pay is one of the most powerful way of linking your performance to rewards. Your compensation, annual compensation review again needs to be linked to performance. Having incentives, some of the common places where you can look at incentives are sales and BD. You have some of the organizations where it is a number-driven production which can be mapped to the individual employees. You look at production is an area, services are again areas. So be as creative as possible. And this is where HR business partnering comes into play. Understand the business acumen for HR is something which is mandatory. Be in the workplace, be at the shop floor if it is manufacturing, understand with your employees what is the kind of system that is prevailing, and each business or each function can have its own system of incentives. So HR cannot be in their cabins to design an effective incentive plan, needs to work closely with the business to come up with an incentive plan that matches the business. And again, recognize, be as creative as possible. I'm just giving two simple examples of maybe a holiday for a team which has really slogged hard to achieve a big target, time off. And I mean, this has no limit. So these are some of these things. And the last part is review your functional performance. So every function needs to have their own internal reviews. Again, we spoke about individual reviews. We are now talking about the functional reviews. Once you, as a team, you sit together and review the function, it contributes to your function, contributing to the organizational objectives. And that is one of the main levers, main drivers for the organization to achieve its objective. Yeah. Thank you very much for the patient listening. And before we really get into the question, answer, and discussion, may I request Niveda to run the poll? Niveda?
Ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah, you're able to see the poll on your screen? Please type in the chat. Okay. May I request the other members to quickly answer the poll? That's wonderful. So 80% of you, okay, there is a change. 77% of you say all of the above. Effectiveness of a performance management system depends on all of the above. Yeah. And yeah, we are also looking at in your organization, 42% of you, that's wonderful. It's so heartening to say that more than 40% of you say you have a well-established performance management system. Hats off. And 32% of you say that you're working on a new PMS. And some of you say we need help in designing and redesigning the PMS. So those of you who are working on a new PMS, who need help in designing your PMS, please do feel free to reach out to the relativity team, and we are definitely there to help you out. Now, thank you, Niveda. We can end the poll, and the floor is now open for questions and discussion. Any questions? You can either type into the chat or unmute and speak. Let me stop sharing the screen. Any questions? Would you be sharing the presentation with the attendees? You can reach out one-on-one to the relativity team, and we'd explore what are the areas of, you can send in your questions, and maybe we can, with specific answers, we can revert back to you. Yeah, Bincy says behavioral competencies can be mapped by psychometric tests to eliminate subjectivity. To an extent, yes, but sometimes psychometric tests, again, you need to look at the validity of the tests, and you also need to factor for the cost involving the psychometric tests. That's definitely one way of eliminating subjectivity. But again, custom designing psychometric tests which factors for all of your behavioral competencies in your organization. That is very important. What is the choice of the psychometric test? Validity of the psychometric test. Again, the cost that goes into it. These are three factors which you need to really factor for. I would rather advocate having your own competency framework with a clear definition of the competency, breaking it down into behaviors. Any questions? Now, what are the common areas? I have a question. Let me see the understanding. Like, let's say for a functional manager, should you have KRAs of team development? If yes, what would be the KPI in terms of it for team development? Am I clear with the question? HOD should have KRA for team development. That's wonderful. Thank you, Sampata. So you say HOD has to have team development. Now, the next question was, how do you identify the KPI? What could be the possible KPI for team development? Can the attrition rate in the team be a KPI for team development? Yes or no? Team development KPIs? Yeah. Somebody says training, team growth, each individual set role. Wonderful. Yeah, team building, self-motivation, recognition, frequency. Yeah, some of the common KPIs for team development could be your retention rate in the team, training, it could be a technical competence or it could be a behavioral competence. So training for your team members, and overall it could be competency improvement or the competency development of the team in itself. Yeah, attrition should be a KPI for team development. Definitely. Yes, Manav, you're right. Bang on. So let me scroll up. I think I've missed a few questions in the chat. So Bincy says we have a technical competency mapping and we have custom made a psychometric test. Wonderful, Bincy. Bincy, may I know the organization that you're from? Can a good PMS help us to retain employees? Upendra Reddy asks, can a good PMS help us to retain employees? Now I would come back to you. What do you all feel? Can a good PMS help you to retain employees? Thank you, Binsia from Kaizen. Yes, absolutely. The answer is yes. If you have a good PMS and if you're able to clearly show the linkages between performance, rewards, if you have an open system, a transparent system of a consultative process, in terms of goal setting, all of these contribute to an effective PMS. And once your performance management system is effective, it definitely contributes to having a better retention rate in your organization. Is there any other question I have missed out, or can someone help me copying and pasting it in the chat? Yeah, Sanjay says HR should get on this along with the line manager. We have experienced line managers. Yeah, irrespective of experience, line managers can only think in black and white and not in gray, whereas HR is wired to think in gray. So it is a common challenge with most of the line managers, and line managers get little confused, and that's where HR has a larger role to play in terms of designing the KRAs and KPIs. One another common challenge which we come across in organizations when we consult organizations is that people have a KRA and KPI as a one-time exercise which was done already. Now, unconsciously, there is a tendency to carry on the same KRA and KPI for the subsequent years. So it is important while you set goals for the period, for the managers or for HR, it is important. Please do make it a point to make sure that your KRAs and KPIs are reviewed in the current context for the current period and realigned accordingly, not just the goals, but also the KPIs. Yeah. Okay, Gayatri says it would be effective if it's on a quarterly basis. Yes, Gayatri, that's ideally a more recommended. Quarterly appraisals are more recommended, but then it varies from organization to organization. Maha says in this organization, appraisal is mapped to increment or it is a review mechanism. See, again, this is a common question or rather misperception, I would say. The moment we say appraisals, people have the tendency to link it with increments or the compensation review. So there are performance management system. The primary objective of a performance management system is to record performance of individuals share feedback about the performance of the individual for the performance period, and again identify developmental needs of the individual for the current role and also for building the future potential of the employee. These are the 4 primary objectives of a performance management system. Now, from there, we take it and link it to the compensation review. So now, but practically what happens in organizations is that we link up, the moment we say performance appraisal, people immediately link it to compensation. Compensation is one of the most important outcomes of performance management, but the objective of performance management is to give valid inputs for developmental needs, feedback to the employee. So we cannot compromise on the feedback loop which goes to the employee, because that is what will actually help him understand, him or her understand where he stands within the team, in the organization, and what are his future prospects in the organization. Clear? I see a few more questions down. How can we select the right PMS? Yeah, all that you need to look at. Are you talking about the technology solution, Vinila? Vinila, are you talking about a technology solution, PMS? Vinila, can you please unmute and answer? Yeah. So you're talking about a technology solution. Look at the validity of the PMS. Compatibility, you see, I would always recommend doing a manual if it's going to be the first year that you're launching a performance management system. Look at doing it on a simple Adobe sheet or a spreadsheet. And then once you fine tune on the KRAs, KPIs, people become familiar, then you look at integrating with the technology solution or the application. Important things are compatibility is your own, you don't buy a solution and then try to incorporate, design your PMS according to the solution, but rather it would be you factor for the elements which are more important to the organization and then look for a compatible solution. So compatibility, cost, size, and how foolproof it is. I mean, you can look at the validity of how long the system has been in use or how many users are currently handling the system, and the more importantly, response from the organization in terms of handling queries. How prompt are they in terms of responding to your customization requirements are some of the elements that drive the choice of your IT solution. Any other questions? Any other questions? Have we missed on any questions? Okay, can you give insights on the rating scale and KPI? So again, the moment you say KPI, the measures vary. For example, if you are looking at revenue, it could be dollar, it could be your Indian rupee, it could be the volume in terms of number of units. If it's manufacturing in quantity, it could be the tonnage. So again, depending on the KPI, you have a rating scale. Now, collective of all these KPI achievements, collective sum total of all your goals, you look at, you have a number, the numeric, which can again, you can spread it on a 5-point scale. Generally, a 5-point scale is recommended. And in order to avoid the tendency of going with an average score, some of the organizations also go with a 4-point scale. Yeah, in order to eliminate people going on a moderate scale, you can also go in for a 4-point scale. Have I answered your question, Sampada? define PMS for each employee group. Not essentially for each employee group, but you can customize it. For example, if you have a manager, for managers, your behavioral competency will also include managerial competencies. If you're looking at it for an individual contributor, the competencies will be confined to the goals and also to the to a few behavioral competencies which are more individual centric. Yeah, you don't have to create different performance management systems, but you have a larger performance management system, but you can customize the elements that go into the performance management system. Have I answered it, DMN? Okay, Sampata, how can we avoid the biases by managers to rate their favorite employee? Yeah, that's a very common challenge that most of the organizations face. Sampata, to answer your question, awareness programs, I do have the same. Okay, I think most of the HR managers come across this challenge and most of the organizations come across this challenge. And as employees, each one of us, somewhere in our career, we have felt this, right? One is sensitizing your managers or the appraisers on maintaining objectivity. That's the reason we continuously say, even when I was making the presentation, you would have noticed in the slides I had mentioned training to the appraisers. Training to the appraisers is very, very important because that is where you keep sensitizing them. And sometimes what happens is appraisers will know the individual for the team members. And if a team member has a requirement in terms of a financial commitment, or if the manager feels that the team member's salary is low with respect to the market condition, or if the manager knows that there is a risk of losing the employee, there is a tendency to overrate the employee irrespective of their contributions, just to make sure that they get a better increment. These are things that we need to be mindful of. We need to really take it up with the respective appraisers and say, de-link compensation review and appraisal. And for the managers, I would recommend you need to have a market correction factor and also educate the appraisers that market correction is something you can take it independently, or you can pass on your recommendations independently, but do not mix it with your rating. That is one. And favorite employee, this is where we say, see, when you try to quantify all the goals so that the numbers speak and the element of subjectivity is eliminated. And in terms of behavioral competencies, once you have each of these behaviors very clearly spelled out, right? When I say customer centricity, now instead of saying customer centricity for an executive, what does customer centricity mean? Promptly responding to customer queries within the turnaround time, or let's say within a span of so many hours. So all of these, breaking it down into minor details, these are small actions which would help you to eliminate the biases by the managers. So please make sure that you run a series of training programs to all your appraisers before the appraisal cycle. Or communication should be common running across the organization throughout the year. I think we've come to the end of the session, and if there are no more questions, can we close? Okay, Neha, I take this as a last question. What should be ideal way to deal with low performers? So ideal way to deal with low performers, the first thing as a HR professional, you need to give them a chance to understand what actually went wrong. The reason that the employee has not been able to deliver could be from the employee side, could be from the team, could be from the environment, or something has really gone wrong. Now, you need to give them space. First of all, is have a dialogue and talk about the scores, talk about the behavioral competencies, highlight, appreciate them. First of all, appreciate them for the efforts. Now highlight on what the gaps are and how these gaps would impact the team's performance and the organization's performance, and also the employee in the long run. Like in terms of his or her own career progression, how these gaps would impact. Now have this open dialogue with the employee and give them ideally 3 to 6 months time. Put them on a performance improvement program. Most of these organizations, larger organizations, have a performance improvement plan, but smaller organizations, it is very difficult to carry on an employee who's unable to get results for longer time periods. But then it is only fair and the principle of natural justice to give them some kind of a scope, inputs, support in terms of training. It could be technical skill, it could be a behavioral skill. Give them adequate resources to train, give an opportunity to change, and then again measure their performance after 2 months or 3 months, counsel them, guide them. And if it still does not work, or the last option should be the exit option, but then putting them on a performance improvement plan is what is recommended. So I would like to thank each one of the participants for your interactive participation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Niveda, for coordinating it so well. And thank you, Relativity, for this wonderful opportunity to interact with the lovely bunch of participants. Niveda, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. I want to express our sincere gratitude for your participation as a guest speaker at our today's event. Your expertise on this topic of key insight to make your performance management system effective was evident, and your insight provide a new prospective thought great thoughts provoking discussion among our audience. We were all truly engaged and learned and a great deal with our presentation, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Niveda. We close the session.